Rolling with the homies. Shout out to Shoot Film Co. Alright, welcome back to another King James video, you guys. I hope you guys have been well. But today we're going to be doing something super fun. It's going to be a street photography. Why did I say it like that? Super fun. We're going to be critiquing your guys' black and white street photography photos. Now, last week I asked you guys over on Instagram to submit to a hashtag using KingJamesBW, submitting your black and white street photos, and there were over 1,000 submissions. So I just want to say really quick, thank you guys so much for submitting. To everybody out there, we are only selecting 10 photographs tonight, but if you guys don't get selected in this one, we are going to be carrying this series forward 1 to 2 times a month in the future, as well as having, you know, some other guests critique alongside me. So just stay tuned, you guys. I got a whole lineup for this series, but yeah, we're critiquing your street photographs. Alright, you guys, so the main kind of theme for this critique is black and white street photography. So let's go ahead and just get a crackin' with the first submission here. And the first one is from Ed Zellant. So I'm just gonna call you Ed for short, man. Ed Zellant. Alright, so the first thing that I want to say, man, is great job with this composition. I love how you utilize this big kind of square box as a nice subframe for your main subject. And that brings me over into the subject. Great job in capturing kind of a mysterious character. So the only thing that we see that's kind of not lost in this opaque, I don't know what you want to call it. It looks like you're shooting from a lower perspective as well, like a window or whatever you want to call it, is their shoes. So that's a nice little touch right there, that nice focal point. One thing though that really stood out to me was the immense amount of leading lines and direction. So let me clear up some of these red marks here. There's a lot of direction going on in this, as well as leading lines. So this giant beam right here is pointing down this direction. You got another one pointing here. You know, based on how you want to interpret it, there's a bunch of different beams leading towards kind of that bottom left of the frame. With that said, the direction of the character walking is also in that same kind of thing. So it's giving us a nice kind of path to follow in terms of leading lines and having our eyes look through the entire frame. So great job on the composition. You cleaned it up really nice here, and you also had a lot of really cool triangles. You have one here, you have another one here, as well as this one, and you got some nice little negative space, nice tones, great leading lines, great composition, great sense of movement and direction, and overall, man, amazing job with this composition. Alright, so the next image we have is from P_INE. And this one really caught me by surprise, man. So overall, there's a lot of smaller details going on here. Initially, when you look at it, it looks like a very simple, you know, photograph, but when you look at the immense amount of detail inside of this frame, there's a lot of work that went into this. So the first thing that you would have to look at is all of this nice kind of dark negative space. You're obviously shooting maybe inside of a cave from looking up or whatnot. I'm not sure exactly of the size of it, but it shows scale. So having all of that, you know, kind of negative space back there shows scale, because these people in the frame are tiny. And if you zoom in, kind of looking at the people themselves, there's a little story to be told there. So, and the best part is you caught them in this nice kind of unorthodox shape right here. Kind of looks like a bean of some sort. The use of the subframe, the use of negative space, and the use of scale to show just how big that opening is was all thought out by this photographer. So P_INE, great job technical wise, and also just utilizing your exposure, man. That's crazy. And also, I appreciate that, you know, you didn't just put the subframe right dead center. I like kind of how it's on that left side, because again, it's showing direction. All those people are walking to the left. They're walking into the or they're walking out of the cave, for example here. All right, the next photo we have here is from Nathan F. Hall, I believe. And initially when I look at this, man, the first thing I think of is like great composition. You have a lot of negative space here on top with that nice open sky, and it's kind of crushing our eyes to look down. Now, negative space can be used various different ways, but one way we like to utilize it in street photography is to basically tell where your viewer to look at. Now, because that negative space is so big on top, our eyes are naturally drawn downwards because there's nothing up there. And when they're drawn downwards, we're presented with this beautiful story of, you know, a kid here riding a bike followed by what looks like their family members. You also have this beautiful leading line that's leading straight into the photographer, and it's just really telling the story of a nice scene, because you could crop it right there. You'd still have a really good photograph, but the use of the negative space and utilizing that to juxtaposition our eyes downwards to look at the story, the main subjects, was brilliant. So great job with that one, man. I'm curious though, what's under? You know, what aren't we seeing? Is it just more street? I'm guessing because it's straight, you know, that could kind of be a reason why you maybe did that. But great photograph, really. You know, great use of negative space, and really clever with it, Nathan F. Hall. Now, all of the images that we just critiqued were all kind of based around compositional elements. But the next photograph here from Analog Shock is something that I feel like, you know, is very, very telling in street photography, and that is emotion. In my opinion, a good street photographer can use composition and emotion to make this beautiful kind of scene. And I think Analog Shock did a great job in that one here. So when you look at the image, man, the environment just around the subject in the middle, I know that the subject is essentially center framed, very simple composition, but if you look at the environment, you have this crazy mountain range here, like just it's super big, and it looks like they're using maybe a longer focal length. And then you have this nice, dense, thick fog layer where the trees are at. That right there just gives me this really interesting kind of like, you know, curiosity. Where the hell is this? What's going on here looks like a set out of Rambo. And then you have your subject standing in the middle of the field with nobody else around, flying a kite. And that tells a very important story to this person's life. They're living in this area that is just an open field with a big mountain, a lot of clouds, a lot of smoke or fog or whatever it is there, and they're flying a kite. A very simple life, a very innocent life. And that really shows a lot of emotion to me, and in this photograph you can definitely see it in the character's eyes here, the way that he just glances back at the photographer. So Analog Shock, man, powerful photograph. Thank you so much for submitting this one. I could also tell, I'm not calling you out or anything, bro, but I could also tell this was shot on film. You got the nice little dust specks on the top there. So shout out to Analog Shock, man. Thank you so much for submitting this photograph. Next up, we have CONORJAMESPHOTO. Now, this is a street scene where you have a lady walking down the street. It looks like a poncho is over her head. You got some bags in her hands. Overall, just a really nice captured scene on the street. Now, initially, the first thing that catches my eye isn't necessarily your main subject in the frame. It's actually the two people in the back with the umbrellas. Now, why the umbrellas? Well, I'm automatically drawn to, you know, dualities, things that are paired in two. And I think most people, like, their just natural eyes are drawn into threes or twos. And now with that said, they're both facing the same way. They both kind of have the umbrellas lined up the same way. And it just shows a lot about, you know, what's going on. So personally, what I would do is I would take that angle from the side and I would probably step in front of the subject. And what you're going to get is you're going to get your two umbrella people pushed more over to the right, but you're going to have the main subject here more on the left side of the frame. And I think it's going to be a little bit more balanced that way. The second umbrella person here is a little bit cut off by the main subject, so I understand that in a lot of street scenes you're just kind of capturing right away, and it may not always be, you know, a composition based photograph. Essentially, that's kind of what I would do. I would kind of balance it out, you know, put the two people on the side with the umbrellas and then have your other subject there on the left to show some juxtaposition. Really quick though, man, I just want to compliment your ability to focus. It looks like this image is really, really good focus. So either you're using really good autofocus or you're just a master at manual focusing or zone focusing. So great job on that. And thank you, CONORJAMESPHOTO, for submitting this image. The next image we have is from Magic Sal 89. Now, I actually met Magic Sal 89. His name is Michael. We met up in my workshop for San Francisco, and I picked this image because it was San Francisco, but I didn't know it belonged to you, man. So yeah, we're going to kind of go over, kind of backtrack to all the things we talked about in that workshop, because there's definitely some strong points to this that you utilize in this image. So first thing that I want to point out is the Bay Bridge. The Bay Bridge in the background, as well as all of the insane leading lines and the direction of which your subject is looking. So we have this nice leading line, and it's starting from the right side all the way to the left. So my eye is going to be drawn now to the left side of the frame because of that leading line. Same thing here with this, the railing. You have a leading line going that way, and it's also positioned in a way to where it kind of tilts a little bit that to the left side. and then obviously you have your main subject looking over here. Now in the workshop, we talked about utilizing a leading line with a payoff. We always want to give our viewer some type of reason to be kind of looking through the entire frame. And in this photograph, I feel like we were capturing more of a mood. You have this sense of loneliness. Maybe this was taken a couple months back, or maybe it was taken yesterday with no people out on the street. It could show a sense of loneliness. It could show a sense of isolation. But composition-wise, I think if there were to be some type of payoff here on this side of the frame, because you have so many good leading lines leading over into that direction, it could really benefit the composition. So great job again, capturing the mood, capturing kind of the isolated person, the aesthetic of San Francisco. But compositionally, you had a lot of things going for it. We were just missing the payoff on the left side of the frame. So great job, Magic Sal 89, man. Thank you for submitting to the critique. Hopefully we could, see each other on the street again and maybe get a shooting session. And gosh, I can't talk right now. Thank you, man, for submitting. All right, next up we have a photo from des_camera. And initially when I look at this, man, the only thing I can think of is great job in framing. There's a lot of things you did with the composition, very technical things that were correct. So here we go. Symmetry. Straight down the line, right in the middle. You have a puddle, you have a shadow, you have very nice reflections, nice symmetry. Obviously, you have your subject walking through the frame, and you also have, kind of the shadow reflecting back over into your main subject. Another thing too, all of these lines right here are nice and straight, and it's very clean composition. And just overall, the person walking through couldn't have been a better subject. Somebody walking with an umbrella, looks like a businessman, they got a suitcase, and then you also got their legs kind of in that strut. Now, apart from utilizing all of those compositional techniques, you got a nice subframe. This nice box right here. And that's huge, man. It really works. And if you draw kind of the rule of thirds into this, there it is. All right, so the rule of thirds applies perfectly with this image. So I'm not sure if this was a photograph that was taken with a really wide lens and then cropped down, but it fits the rule of thirds. It has nice symmetry. You got a nice subframe, and this is like perfect to the T. Even if you turn the image upside down, I think it looks interesting as well. So des_cameraman, amazing photograph. Thank you so much for submitting. All right, next photo up, we got a photo from it_DRN, I believe. Sorry if I butcher your names, you guys. All right, so this image right here, man, a lot of emotion drawing out. So you got this lady, looks like a street performer, and I think she's smiling. And obviously this was taken in New York. This is a very New York type of scene. My guess is that you got a reaction out of the street performer, and it might have been a loud one because other people were like, what's going on? With that said though, great job in capturing a specific moment in time. This looks like a kind of wider angled photograph, and what I would kind of do to add more kind of drama to this image is make your subject look bigger than life. With this, she already has that, great facial expression. She's holding a bunch of these, crazy kind of details. You have a guitar, you have what looks like a towel or maybe a box to hold money in. If I were to take my camera, taking the same photograph, I maybe would kind of duck down a little bit and shoot her going up this way. So she kind of towers over you. And what happens when somebody towers over you, it kind of shows this sense of, I don't want to say dominance, but like presence. They're bigger than life. They're the entire thing. They're like, when you look at buildings, man, and you look up and you're like, holy crap, that's a super tall building, it would crush me. It kind of asserts that same energy when you do that in photographs. So if you ever come across something like this again, depending on how you shoot or your shooting style, what I would usually do in a lot of my photographs is just instantly take a knee, go down, photograph them going up. And I guarantee you, if you would have done that, it might have been a little bit more dramatic, but you still did a really, really great job with capturing the overall essence. Obviously, this was probably just taken in a split second because it looks like she was reacting really quick, and it's a really good photograph. So thank you so much, man, for submitting. Great photograph, great moment, man. You were pretty quick to capture this one, I'm pretty sure. So great job at capturing this photograph, and thank you for submitting. Alright, so next up we have an image from View Through the Lens. Now this right here is a great use of leading lines. You have this kind of leading line starting here in the center, wrapping around all the way to a subject. So now with that said, one thing that I always try to do is when I'm waiting for a composition, if I'm fishing, I generally like to play around with the compositions a little bit. And why I do that is because there might be some things in the frame that I don't want to include. Remember, the cleaner the image, the better it's going to look. Something that I would have done was eliminate the pole as well as the trash can. You had an automatically great, you obviously have a great eye for composition because you looked for kind of that leading line looking over, and then you kind of knew where you wanted your subject to be. But what I would have done is I would have probably cropped it right here. My camera angle would have been down a little bit. And if it means I'm not capturing the entire person's body or face, so be it. I think, sometimes it's cool to just include maybe their legs in a photograph. It draws more mystery. So you could easily, bring the camera angle down a little bit. You might have been able to take this point and started it over here, and it would have been much more round. It would have been something like that. But overall, learning to kind of eliminate clutter in a photograph. Just remember that the easier it is on someone's eyes, the better it's going to be. And again, great job with this one and just finding composition. That's really what it's all about when it comes to street photography, either finding composition or being reactive to a specific moment. All right, last but not least, we have CAQ.R, and this is in New York. Now, this is a pretty solid image. I want to just get that out of the way. I don't know if this is a portrait, and if it's a portrait, great job. If it's a street scene though, hats off, man. Great composition, great detail, great storytelling. Everything in this image kind of works for me. So you could tell it's New York. Obviously in the Instagram post it says New York, but if I looked at this, is what I think of. I think of New York, and you were kind of able to tell that through the subway, the train that's passing by, and it looks like it's parked because it's not moving unless you're shooting at like a 1/2000th of a second shutter speed. You have the subject holding a jacket over his shoulder, and then you have the nice kind of fedora hat, the tie, the shirt tucked into his pants there. If you were to pick like a perfect subject in a street photograph to be in New York, I feel like it would be somebody like him. I don't know why, but that's just kind of how I imagine New York to look. So environmentally, also utilizing the smaller details like that, over the shoulder jacket really adds this old school vintage type of feel to your image. It looks like this image was taken in like, I don't know, 1950s, 1960s. If you can one thing that I always try to tell myself when I'm out photographing is it's not necessarily about the image itself and the quality of the image or the composition of an image, because composition, of course, is really good for looking at. It's really pleasing to the eyes. But if you can somehow make your photograph have emotion, for me, what's really important is how a photograph makes you feel. And if you can somehow portray emotion through it and kind of get my heart into the image automatically, I'm automatically invested in your photography. Drawing emotion is one of the biggest ways you can look at a photograph, and it's one of the best ways to, or one of the biggest things you got to think of when you're making street photographs. So CAQ.R, man, beautiful job with this one. Again, if it's a portrait, beautiful job, composition spot on. But if it's a street scene, man, I applaud you, man. Great job with this image. So that's gonna kind of wrap up the critique. I'm not sure how long this video was, man, but I hope you guys stayed till the very end. Shout out to everybody who submitted this time around. If you guys didn't get selected, remember, we're gonna be doing these often. I think we're gonna do these consistently 1 to 2 times a month. And it's really good to not only give you guys, the viewers of the channel, some screen time and maybe, get your photography out there, but it's also good for me to practice and start to remember these things, because I always take photographs out on the streets, but I'm not always kind of, training myself, training my mind to think in the way that I do when I look at other people's photographs. So thank you guys so much for submitting, man, and I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you guys want to be featured in the next one, man, stay tuned. Follow me over on Instagram, and yeah, that's going to kind of wrap up the video. Drop a like if you enjoyed it. But again, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and that's going to wrap it up. As always, man, Minolta Gang.